Welcome back, everyone. Happy Thursday. We usually record on a Thursday. I don't know when you're listening to this, but welcome back to a new episode of the Conjugate Dad podcast. With your co-hosts, myself, Dave Chase, and Justin Commandoris. As always, sponsored by Common Athlete Performance Coaching. We definitely hope to have our sponsorships. I think last week we did put out, or 2 weeks ago rather, we put out that we want to be sponsored by Dude Wipes or Kirkland Wipes. That'd be nice. We're always looking for money or anything free. I mean, I would be fine if I got some free merch or a sponsorship to use their products or product that we do like and that we believe in. But anyway, today is about CrossFit. But Justin, you said you had something that you wanted to get off your chest before we really dive into everything.
Yeah, I just had this and you're gonna find this really entertaining too because I haven't told you about. Yeah. So I was talking to my mom the other day, and my mom's been doing a lot of my mom loves to do 23andMe, where you find out about your genes and your ancestry and all that kind of stuff. And that's how we found out about my grandfather, my grandmother, and how my grandfather lived in essentially the next town over from Sparta. And so that's a badge that I wear daily because I just think that's the coolest thing ever. But so they did my mom did her 23andMe a while back, but she recently did my dad's, and she called me to tell me the kind of the new stuff that they found out about him. And so one of the things which I sent you the little snippet about the ACTN gene is, so my mom found out that she had 2 copies of that gene. And then they also found out that my dad either had 1 or 2 copies of that gene, which when you have 2 copies of that gene, you pass that to your child, and you give them 2 copies of that gene. And what's unique about the ACTN3 gene is that it contains instructions for making a protein that's found in fast twitch muscle fibers. So what they found was, through a long, I'm sure arduous research project, that those genes and those fibers are most likely to be housed or populated in, or whatever you want to call it. I don't really understand the science of gene therapy and all that stuff, but they're found within all power athletes, okay? Football, shot put, 60-meter dash, 100-meter dash, javelin, wrestling, things that require fast twitch muscle fiber, right? Well, I did a little digging because I found that super ironic and unique that I happened to be a pretty good athlete in a power sport, being that I was given those, 2 copies of those genes or whatever. And so I did some digging, and what I found was that 18% of the world's population has 2 copies, 34% has 1 copy, and 44% has no copies. The thing is, and this is where the irony kind of plays into account here, is that you have all your athletes that are out there in, let's call it, power sports. Keep in mind, we're not talking about sports that, like cross country, those are more slow twitch. That's more of a slow twitch. Or maybe even soccer, it's aerobic / anaerobic. Those aren't super explosive sports. We're talking about explosive power sports, right? That, again, they're dominated by twitchy athletes. Okay, so think about DK Metcalf, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. Middle linebacker or defensive end in the NFL is going to be a twitched up power athlete, right? Well, I would venture to say if you took all the athletes in the entire world, the number still is probably 3% of that 18% that has 2 copies that actually fell into the thing that their body genetically was designed to do, right? So just like anything else, and this is where this gets cool, no matter what you have, no matter if you're taking steroids or you're taking supplements or whatever it is that you can take to enhance your body, if you don't put in the work, you're not going to get something out of it. So you have this gene, right? But you never express it. You never train. You never play a sport, right? Then you don't use that gene, right? It's just like people that are predisposed to type 2 diabetes or obesity. If they don't express that gene by eating a high sugar, high carbohydrate diet without exercise and all the things that make you obese, then they don't express that gene, right?
Yeah.
Just because they're more likely to have it doesn't mean that they're going to express the gene.
Well, and I was just reading about this. This is a BBC article here. I can link it in our show notes. This is actually called "How to Argue with a Racist: 5 Myths Debunked," March 16th of 2020. And the fifth one is Black people are better at running than white people. So that's the myth, of course. And it says the last white man to compete in a 100-meter final at the Olympics was in 1980. And then at the bottom here, it's saying studies have shown that elite athletes in power and strength sports are more likely to have copies of the R type of ACTN3. The research indicates the gene occurs in a higher proportion of African Americans, 96%, compared to white Americans, 80%. That gives a slight population-wide advantage to African Americans to African Americans to take place in explosive energy sports, but it doesn't come anywhere close to explain the difference between the number of African American sprinters and white competitors. If it just came down to that gene, you might expect to see 6 black elite sprinters for every 5 white runners. Adam is I'm sorry I didn't give you his name before here. Still trying to find it. Oh well. Sorry, Adam. It says Adam says this is a simplistic analysis, but still a good example of how genetics don't align with racial stereotypes in sport. I'm sorry, his name is Dr. Adam Rutherford. There we go. So I would just say, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And again, like you just said it, and it's funny. It's not funny, but it's interesting to me that my dad has type 2 diabetes and he also has kidney failure, and people will be like, and including him, right? And he'll be like, oh, well, I'm predisposed to it. Well, I mean, did anyone make you drink that liquor for decades? Dark liquors is like something that like his doctor told him in the early, he was born in the 58, so like the early 80s, like, hey, like don't drink hard liquor, like drink beer, like don't, I wouldn't even drink any liquor at all. Don't do, the most popular drug in the 1980s. Don't like eat like crap. Like
Yeah.
people had heart problems in my family, so I'm predisposed to it. Well, I mean, you love McDonald's. I mean, I used to eat McGriddles all the time. By the way, I have not had a McGriddle in probably like a decade. I feel like I need one after all this fast food and like diabetes talk. I don't know what it is with me, but we talk about like, remember when the Chipotle outbreak happened? Like they were like, Chipotle like has bad food. I think I went.
It was the
and
chicken.
making people sick. Yeah, and I actually went to Chipotle like maybe a day or two after I heard it. Not to go on a tangent, but it was like, this is making me want Chipotle more. Is that bad? Is that good marketing on it? Like, did they put this out here? Like, hey, we're gonna catch some bad heat, but we'll get a bunch. Like when people weren't filling their Chipotle bowls and the employees weren't as much as they wanted, and it was just getting more people. Now Chipotle is running a huge ad with like creators getting their Chipotle bowl. So just a little tangent, yeah. But like you said, like to wrap it up, like just because you're predisposed to something because of your genes doesn't mean that that's definitely going to happen, because you're not activating everything that will start. Like you're not activating, what do you say, like the gene itself, or exposing it or exacerbating it, or, something like that.
Well, and this goes back to probably why the Chinese and the Russians, when they're picking, young athletes for their Olympic teams to train, like they literally go into the elementary school and they have them do tests based on athletic potential, right? So they'll have them do like a broad jump and like a box jump and a sprint, and it immediately will cancel out without having to blood test these people. It'll immediately cancel out 85% of the kids, right?
Yeah.
And then out of that 85%, 15 out of that, or out of that 15% that's left, maybe 5 get picked to move on up to whatever the next stage is in determining who makes the Olympic teams or whatever. It's just one of those things where it got me thinking, like, number one, the first side of it is, like I was saying, nothing is going to work unless you do, right? Sure. But then number two, how many of these people are walking around with this one copy or 2 copies of this gene that have this potential
that aren't doing it,
that aren't doing anything? And how many times, like, this is what was so cool about a lot of my experience with 5 stars, like, you get these people that come in, and one of the things that I always used to like to say to people when they'll get on the InBody and they have a bunch of muscle, I'm like, all right, so like, what sport did you play? Usually people that don't work out a lot but have a lot of muscle tend to, they played a sport, they have an athletic background. And there's always, 1 out of 10 people that are like, I didn't do anything. They just have it, right? And so those people, you're like, you need to double down, because you have something that you didn't know you had.
Oh, so you have a ton of potential and you are just starting your fitness journey. Hey, sir or ma'am, we're about to blast off here. Like you're about to have an awesome time. Or like, hey, because you're predisposed here, not predisposed, but maybe you have that high potentiality. Is that the correct word? I don't
Yes.
know. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, first rule of being American, I told you, you're always right, even when you're wrong. Yeah, like if you have that high potential, it's like great, like you're actually going to crush this, but you have to understand that it may actually explode, and like you're still going to have peaks and valleys, but you definitely have the potential to really get after it in a positive way and see dramatic gains.
The journey is going to be a little easier,
Sure.
like because there's just that much more potential for them to recruit the type of muscle fiber that's the leanest, and usually those are the hardest, right? So if you like, again, going back to like Henneman's size principle, like what does everybody like to do? The high rep stuff, right? All you're going to recruit is like the slowest, laziest muscle fibers, right?
Yeah.
So
I thought you were
versus,
referring to him as Woody because his name's
yes,
Elwood.
Woody.
Yeah.
Um, So versus like doing the hard stuff, the heavy stuff, that's where you recruit the more twitchy, the more text and 2A muscle fibers that create more lean muscle tissue and are more beneficial for functional strength and hypertrophy and power and all these different things. So again, you might be walking around out there with so much potential, right? And you just don't know it. So you might as well take a stab at it and see what happens.
I feel like I always say, not to like go to a different topic, but like I feel like I always say the best way to find out like if you're good at something or even if you like it is just to give it a try. And like we were having this conversation yesterday slash today, my wife and I, she's at work, but she texted me and she said, I feel like a lot of people either because she wants to like bounce ideas off us too, and she was like, I feel like a lot of people just try to like lose weight and they just look at that scale, and like obviously if that's your goal, that's your goal. Like I respect that, but she said I stopped training for the scale and I started focusing on being strong for like the version of myself that I am now at a 32-year-old body, and like she's a mom, she's a wife, like she's a doctor in vet med, so she's like, I need to be like strong for all of those roles versus only super hyper focused on this number that's on a scale. And she's like, I just feel like so much better. We were working out last night and she's like, I feel so much better that I'm like getting better every day with my pelvic floor 8 months postpartum versus like, oh damn, I hadn't lost as much weight as I want. Like she doesn't really pay attention to the number as much as like the clothes are fitting and stuff and how much stronger her pelvic floor is. Like she was doing the what was it, the plate pushes you had her doing where she was like
Yeah.
pushing she said like this
Besides,
absolutely sucks, but I guarantee you I couldn't do this 4 or 5 months ago. And I
yeah.
was like, absolutely you couldn't, but that's the progress, right? Like look at what you're capable of. She's holding the baby doing what is it, lunge to a box. She said, this is my weight now, this is my 20-pound weight. And I was like, yeah, that's functional fitness. And I was like, that's literally functional fitness.
That's the best way to achieve progressive overload because the baby's going to be heavier every
He's
day.
bulking. He's on an 18-year bulk right now, dude.
What is it? That Milo that carried the calf and then he turned into a cow and Milo got stronger as the calf got bigger because he carried it every day.
Is this a biblical story?
No, it's just a like old strength training story.
Oh, okay. I mean, I could read it. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Sounds
anyway, so
awesome.
it's like,
Yeah.
that is part of the dichotomy of training is that if you train a certain way, which I believe, to train like an athlete would train is to be so much more functional and healthy, but at the same time you reap like the aesthetic benefit without actually
Yeah.
focusing in on it. And that goes back to this whole gene thing because it's all fast twitch fibers that you're recruiting in this
Right.
type of workout.
Well, I was also reading when we went to Fredericksburg this weekend, just real quick. They were saying that like I just like grabbed a book and it said like I'll end up reading it in the next like couple months because I have a couple books I want to read first. But it was the original like Olympics and the history of it, and they were basically saying that like Socrates and Plato and like the other guys, like pretty much all these philosophers. It didn't talk, at least the book, the page that I did read, specifically about women, but it did say they still got their training in every day. They were
Yeah.
still grinding in the gym and like, getting it done. And that was just like, part of their daily tasks. You know, I didn't even say iron therapy like we do now. I didn't say like, oh, I need my mental health, moment, which like I would say it's like a mental health hour for me. But they were like, yeah, like I'm gonna go like write some stuff, but like let me get my training in first, so I like feel good, mentally, physically. Like it was pretty cool to read that because I don't think I'd ever known that before, that they
Well,
were so focused on health as well.
it's kind of like a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
Because if you or I were like, God forbid we had to take like 2-3 weeks off the gym.
Oh my gosh.
By week 2, like you're going to start to notice the negative impact on your mental health. And so you have to figure out, now granted, you could do some, let's just say you couldn't, like something happened and you couldn't do those things mentally, because we've done it for so long, there would be a downtrend in your mental health. And so again, blessing and curse, because it's great that we do it, but from the same token, like I'm never going to know what it's like to just be normal and not exercise, which I think exercise should be normal. But
well, we've never had more people working out than ever in this, just by sheer population growth.
Well, and a
part percentage wise, maybe not.
Part of that is because generally speaking, more people were healthier back in the
Sure.
50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, because there was so much more activity going on, because we didn't have all the things that we have now to keep us inside the house.
There's no HEB drop off. What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the perfect segue to today's topic, which is just to dive into the pros and cons and programming of CrossFit. I have a lot of clients that come to me from CrossFit. And most of them are 40 and up. And unfortunately, because of the way that CrossFit was run from when it started until, maybe it's getting better now, but let's just say a lot of people are messed up physically
or dead. What was that last year?
Yep.
Yeah, 2024, the guy died.
Not to put a downside to it, but so when I say messed up physically, I mean like they've got shoulder issues, knee issues, hip issues, back issues, all these different things, from what I would deem to be just like overuse issues. And then probably people that have like bilateral deficits, and they never trained to fix that, because CrossFit was just so open-ended for everybody in the group. And so to kind of tie the beginning of this conversation with the gene to where we are now, I think a lot of women specifically, they look at the 1% of the women that are doing CrossFit in their box or at the games or at the regional level, and they see the type of shape that these people are in. And again, how many of those people likely have 1 or 2 copies of that ACTN3 gene that allowed them to kind of achieve that physique through whatever activity that they chose to do, right? Send me somebody that doesn't have that gene, and then we can prove how well or how not well a training program will impact somebody. And I work with plenty of people that don't have the same abilities as maybe me or the next person that's got copies of this gene or whatever. But ultimately, women see that and they're drawn to that activity, right?
Yeah.
But what gets overlooked is, the techniques that are being used to drive the standard CrossFit box, right? So what I want to do is, because me and Dave tend to, with this podcast, we really wanted to make sure that we look at issues from the fence and not be one-sided, with the exception of like, you have to strength train. There's no other side to that equation. And we like to sit on the fence and look at these issues and say, okay, like, what are the pros and cons outside of like, yes, these people are exercising. That's important, right? Yes, they're getting some cardiovascular work done. Yes, they've got community and social support. But what's deeper than that? And then, what are the drawbacks that go deeper than that? And so not only have we've gone and done some digging in terms of like the pros and cons, but then like stuff that's supported by research either done through the CrossFit community or through PubMed or whatever. So we wanted to make sure to keep this as kind of gray as possible and not be so black or white. So Dave, I'm curious, like from your perspective, what are some of these topics that maybe you're curious about, or maybe you don't understand as much as you would like to, because likely that's what the average person listening to this is going to want to kind of know.
Yeah, like why someone would start it. Is that what you're saying?
Just in general.
Yeah, I mean, when CrossFit comes up, it's kind of like, to me, the first thing that comes to mind is what level of person is doing CrossFit at a very general sense, because you mentioned it before. If you watch the CrossFit Games that's now on ESPN Plus, because I watched it last year when that CrossFitter, his name is Lazar Dukic, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, when he passed last year during the games. But then you also will see stuff online from prominent CrossFitters around the world. I mean, it just, how can I get to that point, I think is the first like real thing that came into my mind when I saw CrossFit. What is their overall like programming? What's the huge benefits? You mentioned before, like what are the risks involved? Like I think injuries, like overtraining, like I'm kind of like looking through our show notes like that we had exchanged before the show. And then like what kind of energy systems we're using, because we just did our last episode on Zone 2 cardio. So I mean anaerobic versus aerobic. And then because you have a lot of women that train with you, why is CrossFit so appealing? You would kind of touch on it a little bit, but like at a very base level, like why is it so appealing to women and just more like people who are looking for community? Because you can kind of say like we're all just in our, like we're very tribal in the sense that like I'm a UT Austin fan, like football fan. You're a UK fan. Well, you know, it's like that's your own tribe. We're very much in the same tribe when it comes to like West Side Barbell. Like that's kind of our tribe. CrossFit tribe. Why are you super invested in that community? To me, it's very similar to finding a church or a community group in your area that you love so much that you just want to hang out with them all the time. Like I do want to hang out with UT football fans all the time because I'm a big UT football fan. But like sometimes it's too much. It's like, hey, like we need to have a little bit of pushback. I need to talk to that UK guy, Justin, who's like,
Yeah.
actually, your team's garbage.
Well, first of all, just to kind of like, I'm a supporter, not a fan.
Well, you're an alumna. Your wife's an alumnus, right? Alumnus.
She danced for UK, so
yeah.
When they want to watch the game, it's around here. It's mainly basketball because
right, sure, Rep Arena. Yeah, dude. Yep.
But I support that. Not necessarily like now. If they start doing good, maybe I'll bandwagon. Right? I can shop it up with anybody when it comes to that kind of stuff. So
he's a good coach. The son of Bob Stoops is coaching.
Yeah, Mark Stoops. It's his brother.
Why did I think it was his son?
I don't know. But
Stoops is old.
So the first thing that I can say is, as someone that I'm not coming from the perspective of someone that's never experienced what that community and social support is like, because I did go, as you know, when you work at 5-star, you can't just go to one place all the time. You have to go to all the places and experience all the things. So I've been to many different boxes that were run different ways. Some were more focused on like overweight women and the type of experience that they had, and others were focused on people that wanted to compete. And so
don't you think that the 5 in the company that we worked for should stand for like 5 gym memberships that you have at any given time?
Yeah, 5 minimum.
5 minimum.
Luckily for me, they were all free, but
anyway. No, yeah.
So I went and experienced all these different types of boxes, and some were easier than others. But I can tell you that you go and do these things with your team, like before work or whatever. Like there is a feeling of this togetherness and that group team environment where you're just like push. It kind of takes over, and so I can see and I support. Because West Side Barbell was the same way. A lot of people feel like it was more about the group of people that were training than it was about the system. I disagree with that to an extent, but I do understand what it's like to have a group pushing you, and you're gonna make incredible changes to your physique and your strength by having people that push you. So I understand and I can appreciate that aspect. Now, that doesn't override a lot of the downfalls of CrossFit, because if you want to look at it from the most simplistic standpoint, I believe that each individual person requires some form of specificity with their training. And because one of the pros and cons of CrossFit is that it's just so constantly varied, to me, it would be hard for you to like, it's over varied, right? So I'm big on variation, but I'm big on like being consistent within those variations. So for instance, for 2 weeks, we'll do an RDL, and for 2 weeks, we'll do a stiff leg deadlift. They're both a hinge pattern, right? But we're not going from a hinge to a squat and going back and forth. We're covering all the bases. Versus with CrossFit, it's something different every day. So in their mind, it's like, well, the body never gets a chance to adapt, but at the same time, you need adaptation to occur and for it to be structured properly, right? So that variety is a blessing and a curse at the same time. Too much variety, you'll never have adaptation that occurs, right? So I think a lot of type A people are drawn to that workout. And so type A is people that kind of get frustrated really easy with monotony. So they have to have a constant change to stimulate their mind because they're more dopamine dominant. They need that constant dopamine to keep them happy. So we're doing something new today. This is exciting versus we're doing box squats again. We're going to add a little bit of weight, even though that the reality is that's what you need to be doing. But in any event, so when you look at just the basis of what individual people actually need, not everybody needs to be doing overhead work and not everybody needs to be doing Olympic movements. I would debate that CrossFit isn't using Olympic lifts as a means to get stronger. Because ultimately, we know that if you, and maybe this is something you can pop up like a video of somebody doing a max clean at the Olympics, that clean is still occurring somewhere in the range of 0.7 to 1.2 meters per second. That is way too fast to create tension. So you're not going to get stronger simply by doing Olympic lifts, right? Because there's just not enough tension involved in the movement to create a strength benefit. Now, can you become better at Olympic lifting by practicing it and you get stronger because your technique gets better? Yes, meaning you can lift more weight, but you're not creating the type of brief maximal tension that you would look for when you're doing, say, like a bench or a squat or a deadlift to a 5-rep max, where those last 2 reps are grinding. With an Olympic lift, the pull is very fast, and the only time you might grind is on the squat portion, the third portion of the extension. And so, again, there's still, if you average that out, you're still hitting pretty fast meters per second, which means that there's not going to be a ton of tension there. That's not me saying Olympic lifts are bad, but what else could we be doing to get that person results faster? It's all about, like, why are they there? If they're there just for a fun way to exercise, cool. But there's so many variables that we know when it comes specifically to women and stress and cortisol and training that the whole specificity thing becomes an issue, right? So if we have a workout for an entire group, but it's a group of individuals, right? And they're simply, most of those people are just training to be more fit or because they want to look like freaking Adonis, right? And so like the top competitors look, well, we know that probably those people have that gene, and so they're not going to be able to achieve that level of physique just from doing CrossFit. They may be able to achieve that physique, but it's not going to come because this is the workout is the reason why.
But wouldn't you also say, too, that these top CrossFitters are not just doing CrossFit? Like, they're training for the CrossFit Games, and they're training for these local and regional events. But you're telling me that the top CrossFitters in the world only do CrossFit year-round? I feel like that's going back to the social media episode. Like, this is all bullshit. Like, we have to be honest and say, hey, listen, I do CrossFit 3 days a week, but the other 4 days a week, I'm actually doing this. Hey, I'm scaling it down, I'm scaling it up, depending on where I am.
So my understanding, and this is coming from guys that I've talked to, had discussions with that are training high-level games competitors. Most of them are using Conjugate, okay, for their strength training. So typically what they'll do is it's a combination of a couple things, but the most like standard is they'll do a max effort upper day. But again, specificity, they're going to use movements that are either allowing them to generate a ton of force, or they're going to use movements like the split jerk or the overhead press or something like that. That's going to drive one of the competitive lifts for them, right? And then they're going to do their secondary movement, and then they're going to do their accessory, their bodybuilding type of repeated effort stuff. Then they're going to do the same thing for max effort lower, and then they'll do a combo dynamic day, kind of like what you're doing right now, except on those max effort days, they're probably coming back later in the evening and doing a really hard Metcon or training for a row or for a swim or bike or something like that. And then on the off days, they have other things that they're training too. So these people are training 2-3 times a day, right?
Right. Yeah. So they're hitting anaerobic, and then you're saying like they might actually hit another anaerobic
If you look
or
at
aerobic.
the main qualities that you need for CrossFit, and we'll get to it, but it's like it's anaerobic dominated, but there's still an aerobic component to it.
Sure.
But again, what we know about strength is that's the mother of all qualities, right? So if these guys and gals get stronger, all their lifts are going to go up, right? Like it's just if your squat goes up, then your clean's going to go up, or if your front squat goes up, then your power clean's going to go up, or your overhead snatch or whatever. So like they're doubling down on those qualities, but a lot of the boxes aren't doubling down on those qualities. And if they are, say like what we just saw on the website, which was that the snatch workout was like 2 in 15 minutes or less. Okay, well, if you want to work up to a max of doubles, right, it's going to require, for you to perform that at the highest level, it's going to require a lot more rest than, getting
I'm thinking at the very
15 minutes.
low level is 2 to 3, so 120 to 180 seconds of rest between. I would say at a very low level, like 180 seconds is probably the sweet spot, wouldn't you say?
It depends.
No, yeah. Well, I'm trying to think in generalities.
Let's just say, 50% you're resting a minute, 60% you're resting a minute and 20, 75% you're resting 90 seconds, all the way up to like, if I wanted to do a top set double, and my previous set was 90%, and I'm trying to do 101% or 100%, like I'm going to need 5 minutes rest.
Yeah. On a very low end, like 4 to 8, right? Like 4 to 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that's not even to mention like, and we'll touch on this, but like if you're adding all this metabolic conditioning within the strength session where, maybe one's aerobic and one's very anaerobic, like it's going to interfere. You're going to get interference, which we talked about that last week. So again, my belief is that you need to separate those things. So it could definitely be done better.
Yeah. It's 2 different workouts, like you said.
Exactly.
You're doing your first workout at 6 a.m. or let's just say morning time. You're doing your second workout around hopefully like 4 to 6 p.m. So a 10 to 12 hour difference of time, which we already talked about many times off camera.
Yes. So pretty standard is like small workouts, you need 12 hours recovery. Big workouts or moderate workouts, it's 48 hours. And then max effort workouts, you need 72 hours, right? So what these guys and gals are doing, if you look at even like the regional competitors, they're training 2 or 3 times a day, but they're up at 5 a.m. I mean, you can go on YouTube and look this shit up. Like, I'm not making it up. Like, you can go on YouTube and watch whoever that's a games competitor. Dave, every time we have these freaking conversations, I forget the names of these people, and I know all them really well in terms of like who they are. So you pick any competitor, that's great. Go watch them, type in day of training for X competitor in the CrossFit Games. You'll see that their life is surrounded by eating, recovery, and training, along with like ice baths and infrared and sauna and massages. They're professional athletes, right? So should we really be looking to these people as like, this is,
the breakdown?
It's great to have somebody to look up to and to work towards, right? But if you can't put that kind of time in, then it's probably not like the best way to go about it. So
are you ready for the breakdown?
Let's hear it.
Morning warm-up, short warm-up to prepare body for upcoming workouts such as light cardio, running, rowing, dynamic stretching, mobility exercise. That's good. Strength training. Of course, you got your lifting weights, performing body weight exercises using other tools like barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells. Skill work, practicing specific skills like gymnastics movements, pull-ups, handstand push-ups, weightlifting techniques, snatches, cleans, jerks, or other movements related to CrossFit workouts. And then afternoon, Metcon, you already talked about this, metabolic conditioning, a set amount of time or reps with high intensity, short rest, skill work or accessory work, active recovery, light cardio, mobility, session of stretching. to help with muscle recovery and improve flexibility. Evening, cool down, static stretching, foam rolling, leisurely walk. Nutrition and rest, obviously, everything should be tailored to them. Progression, recovery, adequate rest and recovery. It just keeps saying like what kind of stuff you need. And like you just touched on the training, Justin. Like we're not even talking about all the other stuff, like you said, like they have to get at a very minimum 6 hours of sleep. And I think that it really should be 8 to 10 if you can squeeze it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
and are you if Justin's training at the highest level, I'm guessing if Megan cannot make your meals, you have hired a private chef.
Sure.
And that person, they are cooking every meal for you and they are packing it away. I mean, I saw it was in the Netflix documentary, the series, the multi episode series Quarterback, where Marcus Mariota at the time was with the Falcons, and he hired one of his really good buddies from like high school, and he was like, "Hey, come move in with me." And his wife was Mariota's wife was pregnant at the time with their first child, and he just made his meals every day. Showed up, he was right there, so he's like, "Hey, like this, you're gonna eat fresh. Here you go." And then if he had to go somewhere, he's packing all the stuff, just with the chef. I mean, it's no different than these athletes, and I do think that it went back to the social media episode where like we have to be incredibly transparent about what these guys and gals are doing, because they're talking about the average person in a CrossFit box is still like probably not in the best shape and definitely not doing everything right. And even if they're doing everything right, they might not have that gene. It's more than likely they don't have. What do you say, 18%? That people have that gene.
Have the 2 copies, yeah.
So they're doing everything, and they couldn't even get to the level that these CrossFit athletes, because they don't have the gene. And then furthermore, their level of 100% is probably 75% or 80%. We've talked about that off camera too. Like, you think you're doing great at nutrition, now actually increase 20%, and that's probably where you need to be. 30%, 40%. Like, you think you're doing good.
Yeah, I mean, and I know this from experience, but a lot of these people would just come to me malnourished. Like,
yeah,
if you're doing 2 wads a day, I don't care how jacked or not jacked you are, like your calories better be up there. And it can't be junk, or else you're going to feel like crap, and your health is going to go crap.
So it can't be 3 numbers, is what you're saying. Some of these people have 900 calories a day, or it can't be 1,200 calories.
No,
you 2 high intensity workouts.
This is Dave. We saw this at 5 Star. Like, people come in and that do CrossFit, and they do the in-body, and they, like everything else, they do it obsessively. So they want to come in weekly.
Yep.
And listen, really monthly to me is the best way. That's what I would tell people. I know we're supposed to tell them 2 weeks, but
I would say 4 weeks. I'd say you can come in, but we're going to throw this one away.
Yeah, again, the variations, the deviations that these people experience because of their lack of glycogen storage in their muscles, because all they're doing is training and they're not replenishing, right? It's like training becomes the first thing for them, when the reality is training's down here. The rest of your day is spent recovering, and that's where the magic happens. So again, these people coming to me malnourished, wondering why their body fat keeps going up and they keep losing muscle. Well, how many calories are you eating a day? And then I go and do the math for them, and it's like, holy crap, your BMR is 1,800, but you're eating 1,500 calories a day. Okay, so
they're not factoring in that they need to factor in the activity level. Their basal metabolic rate is the baseline.
Correct.
And then you're burning more calories. What did we used to do, 1.2 or something like that, and then minus the 500 is like, so hey, you should be eating, Tammy, you should be eating 2,300, 2,600.
It's a scale depending on your, so the highest we always said was 1.8.
Right. It was.
So 1.8 is, I'm an iron worker and I do 2 CrossFit workouts a day. So if these are active people and they're doing 2 CrossFit workouts a day, that's 1.8. Okay. So a lot of these people, they're like, how am I supposed to eat 3,200 calories? It's like,
a lot of meat and a lot of rice. I don't know how else to tell you that.
You have to figure it out, because your output is not matching your input, and that's why you're not getting results. So again, this kind of lays the groundwork for some of the cons when it comes to CrossFit. Again, we're not trying to point out all the negative things. The positives are very easy to see, right? A lot of people do get some results with CrossFit, and it keeps them busy, it keeps them active. But the problem is within that community, because it's so very team oriented, and almost like, I don't want to use the word cult, but I can't think of anything better at this point in time that's a little bit more sensical. But because it's so cult-like, that they want to do what Sally, Veronica, and Sarah is doing, even though they're Jane and they don't have the ability to do those things. So it becomes obsessive. And when you go down that path, it's like, well, I'm just going to do whatever they're doing and I'll figure it out. And it's like, there's so much more to this diverse landscape of fitness and getting results than just, copying and pasting what the next person does, right? So again, there are positives. There is that skill acquisition. They're teaching people, which I think is great. They're having people do explosive movements. Again, pro explosive movements. Con, they're doing it in a fatigue state, which inherently makes it more dangerous, but also removes the whole point of doing something explosively, which is to be able to teach your body. You're sharpening your rate of force, right? So I can squat 500, but if I don't ever jump or sprint or throw anything, then that my rate at which I produce force and power is not sharp. It's very dull. So these people are walking around thinking like they're super powerful, but the reality is that they're doing it in a very anaerobic fashion for a repeated effort. And if you look at Olympic weightlifters or athletes, those guys aren't doing cleans for 10 or 12 or 15 reps. They're doing it for doubles and triples because you lose your ability to rapidly produce force as you get more fatigued. So doing these things in fatigue state not only is inherently dangerous, but also it's not providing you the benefit that you think it is. Oh, well, I'm improving my aerobic capacity by doing the barbell work with the cleans and all this and that, right? No, you're not. We already talked about on the last episode where you need to stay for aerobic capacity increased cardiac output method, right? That zone 2 heart rate, but it cannot be done in the presence of constriction, which is blood pressure going through the roof when you're doing these movements, right? So I think that's kind of where the water gets really muddy and people are going about it the wrong way. So it's like, how do you take all that and then try to make sense of it? And I think, Dave, if you wanted me to, at some point you can say, well, it's all good and great that we've provided all these problems, but like, what's the solution? I'm happy to provide that. But again, if you look at how CrossFit, let's just dive into programming, right?
Yeah.
So CrossFit is particularly characterized as high intensity functional training, right?
Right.
So it's not high intensity interval training, which just simply states a short burst of energy followed by a long duration of rest so that burst of energy is repeatable, right? So this incorporates a mix of aerobic, strength, and skill-based movements. Again, to touch on skill-based movements really fast, I think it's great that there is a skill acquisition component to CrossFit. Number one, because it makes the movements safer. But number two, like motor learning is a real thing. And the better you are at a movement, the more of those high threshold motor units you can recruit while you're training, right? So at first, maybe you squat and you hinge over terribly and it's just awful. Like you're not recruiting a lot of motor units to your quads or your hamstrings because it's all going to your back and you're just not recruiting them well. As your form gets better, you start to recruit things better. You get leaner, you get more powerful, you get stronger. All these things happen. Okay. So that's good. Workouts often include a combination of weightlifting, gymnastics, and metabolic conditioning, okay, to promote well-rounded fitness. Again, all of those things can appear in a traditional workout and have a ton of benefit. But when combined together in a repetitive fashion, in a state of extreme fatigue, that's where things start to get real dicey. And so that's where things become problematic. I think it's great that these guys and gals are doing gymnastic stuff and they're keeping their mobility and they're doing the metabolic conditioning. Again, it's all about how it depends, right? It's all about what that person's needs are. But these training sessions aren't really designed for the individual. They're designed for the greater good of the group.
Right. That's going to be our cover art. It's going to say the Conjugate Dad podcast with Dave Chase and Justin Commodores, and then it's going to write just in quotes, "It depends."
It depends. Or we can change the name to It Depends Podcast.
The It Depends podcast. The It Depends podcast with your hosts Dave Chase and Justin Commodores.
Yeah, exactly. So those are all good things.
Presented by Depends. There we go.
It depends. The basis of this whole thing is good-hearted, right? There's good intentions behind this structure.
Who was the creator? Let me see that. Who created CrossFit?
Glassman.
Well, I know we were talking about Greg Glassman and his wife, Lauren Towson. Greg Glassman is primary architect of the CrossFit workout program, which combines elements of weightlifting, gymnastics, other disciplines. Right. I mean, what is he? And you and I talked about that before we got on here. He actually did very well. Okay, so it says here, first affiliated gym known as a box, CrossFit North in Seattle, Washington, then formed in 2002. Nice.
So
Develop a curriculum to train and certify coaches and gym owners using his methodology. It says coaches associated with CrossFit include Louis Simmons, John Wellborn, and Bob Harper.
2 of the 3, I don't know who John Harper is, but 2 of the 3 are well known for conjugate style programming. Again,
I didn't know Bob Harper was that Bob Harper, dude. That's the guy that is in Biggest Loser, or he was.
I don't know who he is, but
you ever watched Biggest Loser? Jillian Michaels. Yeah, he's just the guy. He's the original guy with Jillian Michaels as the female trainer.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, you know.
The overarching theme and programming style of CrossFit is conjugate, right? Because it's constantly varied, and you're conjoining different areas and bringing those up at the same time. But if you're doing way too many things a lot at the same time, you're really not going to make the same amount of progress. Right. And I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. Like I don't have to. People can argue, whatever. There's nothing to argue because I've visually seen what the reality is, and the reality is that 15 to 20% of the people do really good with it, and 80% it's a flat line. Okay, it's a flat line for a couple of reasons. Number one, they start to come up. Right, they're coming up. Realize that was off screen, and then something happens. Right, they get burnt out. Life happens, and or they get injured. And then they come down and they start back here. And they're doing this very triangular type of cycle of starting back here. And in some cases, they start back even lower. And like, that's not whether it's their lifestyle. I mean, again, we can talk about the Gen Pop, how it's just not, it's not the best thing for people that work full-time jobs and they're a mom or a dad. Like, they have high-stress job, and then we're going to throw them into a very high-stress workout, but we're not going to provide them with any way to reduce that stress or a protective mechanism against said stressors. So again, like there's some things here that are great, but there's some things here within that, around that greatness that kind of get jumbled up. And I think part of the problem is the randomness, right? So
yeah, I wanted to give you a quick note here, only because you said like the randomness before you went on. John Wellborn played in the NFL from 99 to 08.
He was a tackle.
Yeah, so he was on the offensive line, and then I guess he moved from like tackle to guard too, which is pretty cool. But he also says he started his first game in Arizona. I'm pretty sure that he probably met Buddy Morris there, if he was already there in 99. But I'm sorry, against the Cardinals, my bad. But he's also the Power Athlete HQ, like he's the creator and operator. And then it said here, travels the world lecturing on performance and nutrition. And since retiring in 09, he's consulted and trained athletes in MLB, NHL, NFL, CrossFit, and the Olympics. And then worked in the same capacity for Naval Special Welfare in the U.S. Army, teaching performance-focused trainings. Just to note, he's taking that randomness and saying, hey, this is specific for like physical preparation for the armed forces, specific sport training for these athletes versus, like you said, the Gen Pop mom who's 45 and is trying to be in better shape. She doesn't even know what she's training for. What are you training for? I mean, I think that we both know it's training to be better for your kids and for your life, your quality of life. It's not, a strength sport.
He's done several symposiums and podcasts on, where CrossFit gets it wrong. And he's essentially, saying the same thing that I'm saying now. And that guy's a savage. I mean, he's 5 or 6 years older than me, and he's still super strong. And, again, you're taking the guts and the nuts and bolts of something that potentially can be really good, and you're just mixing it all up in a pot and hoping that whatever you dump out comes out the right way. And you can look at the different systems that are being used. It's highly anaerobic, moderately aerobic, and I would say the aerobic side of it is really coming from when people rest, because everything's done and engaged during high intensity efforts that last from a few seconds to a couple of minutes. So the anaerobic system is 30 seconds to 3 minutes is when you're using your anaerobic system. And then, so that's without oxygen. And then the aerobic system is with oxygen. So that's anything beyond that 3-minute threshold up to however long you sustain that effort. So it really just kind of, it all gets mixed up and the water gets really muddy. It's not very clear. The training frequency can be 3 to 4 times a week. And, but that gets abused because they have what's called open box, right? So you go and do the team WOD, the team workout or whatever, and then they have open box afterwards, or they have open box on the next day, or they have a strength focus session the next day. You're telling people 3 to 4 days a week, but the reality is you're giving them the option to do 12 days a week. And that's where things get problematic, in that Sally and James see Sarah doing 9 workouts a week and looking great. Oh, that's what I need to do. And that's where the issues kind of come into play. So a lot of it falls in the individual's lap.
But Justin, this is the CrossFit. That is not limited to CrossFit, though, because we have people in our lives that are like, I need to train every day, and they think that they need to beat themselves into the ground every day. And I go to the gym 6 days a week because Arnold did that. And it's like, okay, he may have done that, but you're going to tell me he went super heavy every single day? Ronnie Coleman going super heavy. How's that working out? Dorian Yates has said this for decades. I only train 4 days a week. So if Mr. Olympia trains 4 days a week, why are you training more than 4 days a week? I'm very confused.
I feel like the max amount of days, again, for most people in a row should be 2 days, followed by a low
or just a 7-day period. A 7-day period, no matter what split you're doing. If you're going to actually go max effort, like we've talked about, max effort, dynamic effort, the max you should do is 1 to 2 max effort days in a specific area, 1 to 2, 1 dynamic day. So that would be what? 4 days? So 3 to 4 days. I'm doing a 3-day strength and then 2 zone 2. Well, yeah, I would say 4 zone 2, right? Because you're putting in the rucking.
Yeah, I mean, but
it's a low level. Yeah, it's a low level. But it's still the same thing. It's any type of training you're doing, CrossFit, strength training, running. A lot of people don't get it until later in life, and I am no different. And you are no different, because you've already said this. We already talked about this on the 3rd episode for Zone 2. I'm sorry, Episode 4, which is Zone 2. And it's like, when are these people going to have that light bulb come on and go, hey, I don't need to train more than 3 or 4 days a week at a high level or a decent, level. And then the other 2 days, why are we not going outside and doing some Zone 2? Why are we not doing kettlebell, dumbbell work? And I'm totally with you. 5-10 years ago, I was not doing anything kettlebell related. I honestly thought they were dumb. Now it's honestly pretty fun. I feel like such a beast, an athlete, when you touch those kettlebells, because it's just cool to move around. But sorry, I went on a tangent there, because it's CrossFit is literally just like every other discipline where people are like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do it as much as I can because I see the top athletes doing it. No, that's just what you're seeing online.
Again, the social media dichotomy, right? But ultimately, with CrossFit, there's just so much going on, right? Energy systems, oxygen system, glycolytic system, oxidative systems. Phosphagen is the ATP system, and that's 10 seconds all out, followed by quadruple rest minimum of the duration bout. The glycolytic system, still high intensity. This is more anaerobic, so 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and this relies on the breakdown of glucose for energy for sustained efforts within that 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And then the oxidative system is aerobic, which is anything longer than 2 minutes. That's mainly going to be using oxygen to produce energy the longer you go. Now, again, what do we know about how would I improve my ability to rest better in between sets and to recover better in between different movements and to recover better between different workouts, right? The aerobic system, if you're doing your zone 2 work, that's going to allow you to recover. But again, I've never gone into a CrossFit gym and seen somebody on the bike for 45 minutes just at a zone 2 pace. It doesn't, that's not really built into. Now, the high level people are probably doing it because of the benefit, but most of that's not being utilized. So really what we can say is CrossFit's going to be mainly glycolytic, although those short bouts of 10 seconds or less, that's the Olympic lifts. It all depends on if they're doing strength work or not. But the bulk of what people think of as CrossFit is going to be the WODs of the Metcons, right? Where, we're doing a 15-minute EMOM of, toes to bar, push-up burpees, kettlebell swings, and a 20 cal row, for example, right? And you're doing that as many rounds as possible in 15 minutes. There's no mention of rest. Your rest is really only, what you're going from the time from step A to step B to step C to step D. And then if you rest, you're going to get a slower time. And nobody in CrossFit wants to get beat. Right. So again, what energy system are we using there though? Essentially what you're doing is you're taking your heart rate up to about 80% and then you're just keeping it there for the duration, right? Well, so that's mainly high intensity training. And again, we know that actually isn't providing the same benefits to the heart and to the circulatory system as doing zone 2 aerobic work. But on the other end is when you're doing these strength-based movements in a high-intensity fashion, you're also not creating enough tension to build strength and muscle. So what are we doing here? Are we just trying to burn fat? There's just so many things where you can go wrong, especially if the average person is not consuming 3,000 calories a day. And this could be for a 140-pound female, right? If you're doing that much work, you have to consume the calories and the nutrition and the hydration and all these different things.
It's the context matters though, right? Like it's the same as like, I don't know about your wife. I'm like, I don't care. I'll share it on this show. Emily's, breast pumping and all these calories are being depleted really quickly. And it's shit, Dave, I'm really hungry all the time. I go, I wonder why. Obviously I don't.
Calories a day.
Right. And I try not to be like a smartass about it, but I'm like, Emily, you have to eat probably like every 90 to 120 minutes. Like even if it's just a snack because you're depleting all of these calories and you're also not getting enough recovery at nighttime to fully recover because you're like getting up to pump in the middle of the night. Always. So it's the same with CrossFit. Hey, like, you need to get 700, 800, maybe even 1,800 more calories than you're eating now. Well, why? Well, let's just look at everything you just did. You're burning 3,200 calories a day. It's like, yeah, like if you can't hire a chef, like hire someone that, who is the, what's her name? Fit Waco mom. She owns the Fuel Up. Either go to someone like that can get your meals for you in a local area if you have access to that. That makes the most sense, right? Or just spend the time cooking it and then still supporting local would be amazing. But it's like, don't say you don't have the time to do it. You're going to make time you're making time to go to CrossFit at 5 a.m. You're making time to go to your kid's baseball game. That is an important thing to go to. Or you said Jack had a golf camp. Like, yeah, it wasn't Jack. I'm sorry.
No, it was golf. Yeah.
Yeah, golf camp. You're going to make time to go see that. But you're not going to make time to eat. You're not going to make time to recover. That doesn't make any sense to me. Everything matters. Like it's not just one thing matters. It all matters.
It all matters, especially again for the people that are enduring the everyday stressors from their job and from their kids and from their spouses and all these different things, right? So all that stuff has to be taken in consideration, and it's just unfortunately it's not. From what I saw, now this could be completely different as of today, but all this research that we did points to like it's pretty much the same. It's not different, right? I just think a lot of people they're kind of wising up to some of the inconsistencies. Not only that, I didn't mention this, like most of these boxes, they've got 2 or maybe 3 coaches for 50, 60 people in a workout. So if we're building skill acquisition in a movement, how is 3 people helping 60 people to utilize the right form? So then what happens is you have the blind leading the blind, which this is a quote that I picked up from. That's a quote that I picked up from my defensive line coach my senior year and going into the spring of my senior year in college. He stepped away to take a phone call or something in the middle of practice, and we started working some drills. And he came back and like we were so excited because we're like, we did all this stuff while you were over there. You would be so proud of us. And he's like, oh, so it's like the blind leading the blind, right? And so what I'm saying is if someone that's not a coach is doing a movement, maybe they're really good at the movement because they've done it 1,000 times, right? But we know it takes 10,000 hours in order to be an expert in an area, right? So if you're not a coach and you're coaching someone on how to squat properly or do this because that's the way that I do it, it's probably going to run amiss somewhere, right? So again, it's not the specificity gets kind of lost in translation. And so that's just another issue where if you had hands-on with these people or the movements weren't done in a super fatigued state, then things are going to go a lot smoother, right? So I think, was there anything else that came to mind that you wanted me to kind of touch on? Because what I would like to do is kind of say, well, how can we do pseudo CrossFit done right?
How can you improve on this? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would like to provide some feedback on that.
I mean, would you feel like before we go into that, did you feel like we provided the appeal to women enough? And then I think we already went over the benefits, the drawbacks. Just to go over the drawbacks, I think that this goes without saying here, but I'm just going to read this from our notes in our email this morning. While injuries can occur in any exercise program, CrossFit has been scrutinized for its potential for injury, particularly with complex movements performed at high intensity. A study published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research found that injury rates in CrossFit can be comparable to those in other sports, but emphasize the importance of proper training and coaching. And that is from Mayer et al. I don't know if you say et al. It's been a couple of years here. 2019 study. The other thing is another drawback would be intensity and burnout. I think you had talked about that earlier. Physical exhaustion and in some cases burnout. Athletes need to listen to their bodies and prioritize recovery. And then cost and accessibility. That's something we have not talked about. CrossFit boxes and their memberships can actually be like very pricey. I think like a commercial gym is going to be under like $50 a month, like in most places. Obviously, that is going to vary by location and then the level of the gym. Of course, if you go to like an Equinox, it's not going to be $50 a month. If you go to an LA Fitness or a Planet Fitness, we know that that's going to be around that $10 to $45 a month, which is going to limit some people. But just because a gym is a high number does not mean that you're getting expertise. I trained at a very pricey gym, and I would say that you can get that training online, or you can get it at other gyms for cheaper or just as much money. And it is going to vary. You said like blind leading the blind. If someone's not doing something correct, you can pay $500 a month to go to a CrossFit box and still not get any improvements because the coach is not practicing what they preach, or just doing proper form. And I think certifications play somewhat of a part, but definitely the experience. But yeah, I just wrote here like adaptations for different populations. Start with foundational movements. Older adults, we do see older people starting into it, not to like on a rant, but I think you have to find an area where, like you said before, like if you've trained football in the past or if you ran cross country, like try to find something that you really enjoy and don't just jump into something because your neighbor or your friend is really into it. Everyone is on this earth is built differently. We all come from different places on the earth. You and I are built differently, but we're both men and we're 9 years apart. But that is pretty much all that's similar to us is we both and that we're both men. After that, we couldn't be more different. And that's just the fact. So find something that works for you and your body type with nutrition, with fitness, your mental health too. You might find that you like doing more steady state versus high intensity or what have you. And then I would say I think that we didn't really touch on the cultural impact of CrossFit in the fitness industry.
I think as far we did,
Well,
as
I mean,
far as
yeah,
like the fact that no one wants to get left behind, right?
sure.
And the more you get involved in that group, the more you want to be active in that group, right? So again, somebody that's 25 and has the time and the money and to recover and do the 8 to 10 workouts a week is going to be different than the 42-year-old female that wants to get back to looking like that, but has 3 kids and a full-time job and works overnights and is only eating 1,200 calories a day. That becomes problematic because they're going to be influenced by what the other person is doing based on how they look. And unfortunately, that's just a reality of that. That's not just a CrossFit thing. But because it's such a tight-knit group of people, they won't kind of look at the individual or themselves in the mirror and say, well, I need to be realistic with what I'm doing here because they just don't know any better. There's not an educational process. It's more of you get thrown into the fire. Anytime I went to a box and did a WOD, there was no, okay, this is,
Instruction.
it's just, this is what you have. You have
Demo. Yeah.
15 barbell hang cleans and you have, 10 sandbag carries, either 200 pounds or 100 pounds, and you have 30 kettlebell swings, and we're doing this for 20 minutes for time, or as many rounds as possible in 20 minutes, whatever, right? There's not a whole lot of instruction that goes on besides they signed this waiver. So specificity matters in that people have issues. People have bilateral deficits. People have restrictions to their mobility, to being able to do overhead. And I get that, oh, well, they can just do RX. It's like, yeah, but the RX is still a pretty similar movement that will match the intensity of what it is that you're actually doing. So, oh, well, the RX is, a power clean, or excuse me, the RX or the lower level beginner is going to be a kettlebell clean, and then the advanced is going to be a power clean. It's like, yeah, but that person's going to want to do the power clean because of that group environment, right? So a lot of times, people want to step outside what their comfort zone is, and I think that's a good thing. But how do you do it safely, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Let's get your modern programming, or How to Fix CrossFit by Justin Comandores. How about that?
So the first thing you want to take into consideration, and I'll just give you like the basic programming layout, right? We want to keep the strength work separate from the high intensity or the conditioning stuff. Like we're really not going to mix energy systems too much here, because that's where interference kind of plays a role, right? And there's a lot of interference with CrossFit, okay? You don't go from a max to doing 150 cals on the rower and think that there's not going to be some kind of interference there. What is the interference, in case you missed the last podcast? Well, if I'm looking at strength work, just to break it down nice and easy for you, right? Dave, when you get done with your workout, the first thing you want to do is bring your body back to homeostasis. Right. So we want to go from sympathetic to parasympathetic, right? And start the recovery process, because all that inflammation is being built up because you've broken down muscle tissue, right? I need to repair that. So if I'm following strength work, or the opposite, conversely, if I'm starting with conditioning and then going into strength work, am I going to have the glycogen to be able to perform my movements on a high level? So let's separate those things, so to speak, right? But I still want to scratch the itch of the person that enjoys the nature of that style of training, right? They just have different goals now. Okay. So one thing that I would do is I would say work up to a rep max, likely not going to be a 1 rep max, but let's say a 3, a 5, or 6, or an 8. And I would give them a time block. Okay. That's realistic with rest intervals. So let's say we're doing a trap bar deadlift. The person's not very strong. It's not going to take them a lot of time. So I want you to work up to a 5 rep max in 12 minutes using these rest intervals, because I went back and did the math, and they're going to have plenty of rest time in between sets. After that, we're going to do that secondary movement, or that second primary movement, which just allows us to bring up the strength and weaknesses of the first movement. Okay. Again, normal, we don't even need to talk about sets and reps. The normal amount of rest time, whatever that movement is. So if they did a trap bar deadlift, right, let's do something that's going to strengthen the hips and the quads more. So maybe we'll do a split squat or a Bulgarian split squat or something like that. Again, we're going to keep that in the normal range of rest, 60 seconds to 90 seconds. And then what I do is I say, okay, this next portion is, we're going to call this the Metcon, or the workout of the day portion. But all I'm going to do, Dave, is I'm going to take the accessory movements that I want them to achieve, and I'm going to superset them, and I'm going to attach some higher intensity full body, so like a kettlebell swing or a heavy carry or something like that. Yeah. And then I'm going to kind of minimize
conditioning. Yeah.
Correct. And I'm going to minimize that rest interval, right? You can, within that, you're still scratching all the itches, right? Then when we move into day 2, which is typically a conditioning day, instead of doing, for the A-type people, instead of doing just like your standard steady state stuff, we're probably going to do like a mixed modality session, which is kettlebells or dumbbells for explosive-ish movements like cleans or snatches, or if they're able to do overhead stuff. And I'm going to combine that with an airdyne or a row or a ski or a carry or a sled for time, but with rest.
I will say, if you can get little things like that, not to interrupt you, but if you can get little things for your home gym, even if it's just a sled or just kettlebells or just an airdyne. Well, if you got a sled and kettlebells, that would probably be less than the airdyne. But that is so good, because then you don't have to go to the gym every day, and then you can walk around your neighborhood and get that really good conditioning, and you don't have to leave. So then there's no excuse during the snow or cold or early mornings, late nights. Yeah.
So like you can look at my Instagram page and kind of see where I started to justin.commodores.coaching@instagram.com. Okay. You can look and see where I started to fall in love with kettlebells because it's clear as day.
Yep.
And it's within the last year. I just find that there's something it's more than functional. It's very, I hate to say primal because Liver King, but it feels very primal, right?
It does.
Something about just lifting this odd object and doing different things with it. First of all, it's great for your body. It's great for active mobility and strengthening and lengthening and all that kind of stuff, but it really gets your heart rate up. And so you would see, this person would see a lot more kettlebell work show up.
Yeah.
And
then you said like it feels primal. I like actually like tell Emily all the time. I said it takes me back to hopefully my ancestors were like pretty sweet, like badass cavemen or cave people. Because when you do those front rack carries and you're like, carrying it like this, and I'm like, yeah, when you get the animals over your shoulders, thousands of years ago, and she just rolls her eyes at me and she's like, dude, you have a kettlebell in your hand, and we live in a suburban area of Texas. Honestly.
Another good one there, Dave, is the sandbags.
Right, like you think you're so cool, and this is actually functional fitness if I had to drag something or carry something out of there.
The closest you can get to carrying around a human body is probably a sandbag or a kettlebell. You're not going to get that same feel with doing a trap bar farmer's carry as you would if you were carrying like a sandbag or...
Which is fun, but it's not the same. Yeah.
So...
mixed modality.
That would be mixed modality, would be conditioning day number 1.
Yep.
Then upper body for day 2. Same format as day 1.
Yep.
And then likely, again, depending on the person, we're going to do something lower intensity for conditioning on day 4, but it's still going to be entertaining. So let's do a 20 cal row at a very moderate pace. So it's not brisk or challenging. It's just a moderate pace, right? So it's going to take you a minute and a half, 2 minutes, but you're able to breathe through that. Then what we're going to do is try to sustain that zone 2 heart rate through like a carry, for instance. That's not high intensity. So like a lighter weight carry. And then I'll throw them at the end of that, a core movement. So it's like more active rest. So they're not having to rest as much at the end. We'll do that for 30 to 45 minutes. And I'll kind of compartmentalize that as a WOD. So it'll be like every minute on the minute for 30 minutes or every 2 minutes on the minute for 40 minutes or whatever.
So an AMRAP, you say timer,
whatever. Yeah. You're still getting that mindset of like, I'm working hard.
Yeah, you need to entertain yourself and work hard to a point. Yeah.
But you're still giving back to your recovery. Then the real fun WOD day would be Friday or Saturday, which would be that mixed dynamic effort. So that one I would keep very close to the traditional dynamic effort, except instead of doing a bench, it would probably be a push jerk or a push press, or instead of, I think that they need a box squat regardless if they want to bring up their cleans. But, doing 5x5 with 70% on a speed box squat with 40 seconds rest in between, or 30 even, is equally as hard, if not harder, than CrossFit. Okay, you're talking about moving 10,000 pounds of volume in 6 minutes. Right?
And if you haven't done it, just for everyone, if you have not done 9 sets of 3 or 8 sets of 3 or 7 sets of 3 for 30 seconds rest, so you're getting it done in, 8 to 10 minutes, Justin? If you hadn't moved 10,000 pounds in 10 minutes or 8 minutes, give it a go and let us know either on our Conjugate Dad pod or Justin's page or my page, or comment on this on Spotify or YouTube. A lot of plugs, because it will kick your ass. It's 100% will kick your ass. And it also, we mentioned this in episode, was it 1 or 2? It'll keep you off your phone because you're like, oh shit, I'm up again.
Yeah.
I gotta go again.
30 seconds goes by like that when you're already fatigued. Granted, it's that if you're using accommodating resistance, there's only 50% of steel on the bar plus another, 25% attention. But most people don't have, we can. Most people don't have access to chains or bands within their home gym. Sure. I just say 70%, right? You're moving it as fast as you can with good form, and you're trying to be explosive, right? So we're either going to do an overhead or a bench for speed and minimal rest. And then we're going to do a squat for the same, and then either that speed deadlift or we're going to jump. Likely jumping probably makes more sense depending on the person, but again, most people aren't jumping, so it's something you have to kind of build up to. If they like the Olympic lifting, that will show up on dynamic day. We won't go max effort cleans or snatches because it really just doesn't make any sense for what the person's trying to achieve in most situations. So after that, again, we're gonna create the chart of first to last and what are the problem areas that this person has. Those become the accessory supplemental movements, and they're done in superset fashion. Likely at the end of that, on the end of dynamic day, is when I will do a finisher. That will become like their 10 or 12-minute Metcon. Okay, but that's only being done once a week.
And this is also something that you didn't even mention. Like, this comes with an assessment before you start training online with Justin or myself. This also comes with the individualization and customization of this person, John Smith. What does John need to improve on? What does Jenny need to improve on specifically, versus you're not 1 in 25 people in a class. And now maybe let's just say it's as small as a 4-person class all the way to a 25-person class. You can see all the areas, and now you can use the Conjugate system to actually work on everything you need to work on versus the coach is programming for 200 people in the box.
Right.
And we know that that's not going to improve as much as individualization and customization for one person. Obviously, that takes more time, but that's why online coaching and specification rules over Gen Pop, just box programming.
Yeah, so again, we're taking into consideration, this isn't necessarily about us plugging like what we do per se, but again, what are your options when it comes to specificity? And I'm not a big fan of like functional hypertrophy or the word functional hypertrophy or like the word specificity. But in this situation, the context is important and it matters because each person's going to have their own weaknesses, right? Yeah. Some people should gravitate more towards the box squat. Some people should gravitate more towards the free squat. My knees feel great when I box squat. My knees actually feel really good when I front squat, because the weight is front loaded, it's anterior loaded, but back squatting does not feel good. No matter how perfect my form is. Number one, when's the last time you saw me squat with a barbell? Never. Like, my shoulder mobility right now does not. Yeah. So I need to be here.
You usually do the SSB, right?
Yeah, always. Or the camber bar. But again, like, when you have options like that, you can get down to the nitty-gritty of what someone actually needs, and it's more about the individual and less about like the group per se.
Right.
I think group training, if done in a standard like Conjugate template like what I just described, there are a small number of people that have boxes that are doing that. Okay, we're not trying to just poop on all the different boxes. A lot of these boxes are doing it right, but most of them they're not doing it great, right? And so you can do it the way that I just described within a box and cover the bases based on what somebody needs, because I can watch you do 1 rep on a squat. You're folding and your upper back is rounding, so we need to go do some face pulls right now. And that's something else we didn't talk about, is the limitation of equipment in a lot of the boxes, right? So you're not going to find cable machines. You're not going to find a belt. Some of them might have a belt squat, but you're going to see barbells. You're going to see bumper plates. You're going to see all the multi-racks for pull-ups, and you're going to see rings. You're going to see bands. You're going to see a glute ham raise, which is 9 times out of 10 not used for what it's supposed to be used for. And you might see a reverse hyper or 2, right? But you're not going to see any other machines that you can really use to drive someone's level of strength up to where they can protect themselves better. Because ultimately, Dave, the stronger you are, the worse your form can actually be, because it's safer for you, because your body can still move through mistakes, versus the average person is not very strong. So if we're going to put them on these high intensity, high skill acquisition movements, things are going to happen that aren't great, right? Yep. And it's like, what's the point? If the point is to first and foremost do no harm, right? But these people are getting injured, And it's a fact. It's not is a fact. I'm not saying anything that is not true. Physical therapists and surgeons love people that do CrossFit because they get hurt a lot. Why are they getting hurt?
I was going to say this to you too. Yesterday when I did those box squats with front box with a chain, I don't usually do the traditional under, palms to the sky, I guess, or I don't know what they would call that. But I usually did crossbody or like prisoner, I guess I would say.
That's just a clean grip.
Okay, clean grip. Yeah, I never say that because I never would do it. So I just kept it on my mind. And yesterday I just said, screw it. Let me just try it out. And I know it's because I've been doing my zone 2 work and my kettlebell work that over the past like month or so, or even maybe 2 months. And now I can actually do, and I did that 330 or what, 315, is that what it was? Yeah, 315 for a single with the chains on. I don't know how much the chain's at. I always say this, like, I'm always like curious. I wish I could just like weigh it based on where it is, but it was interesting to me to see like, hey, like that's actually a huge win. And I box squatted more than that without chains, but it was the fact that I could increase my mobility. That was a big win because we worked on things that needed to work.
Right. Mobility isn't you can look up the definition of mobility and it has nothing to do with stretching. It's like it's tension under load or something.
Yeah, like doing this. Some people can't even do this and come back. If you can't do that, we got to work on other things to get you to do it.
I love Olympic movements. Like I love doing them. I think they're fun. I get a lot of enjoyment out of doing them, but I can't front rack because bicep tendonitis, right? So that's out for me. Snatching overhead on this shoulder is just so bad that I can't because all of this is tight. It's very hard. So I'm having to work diligently now to get that better. And so because I want to do those things and because it's fun, not because there's a point to it. Like I just think that they're fun and I can generate a lot of force and power.
This was one thing I wanted to actually ask you about. You said like you're tight in this area. I went to this store this past weekend called Intelligent Threads, and it's like technology where it relieves, I'm going to send it to you in our chat, it relieves tension in certain areas. And the guy you were talking about, like, I wanted to ask you if you think like something like this is like bullshit, but basically like relieves that tension that you said you had here. I have calves that are super tight, and then I think you showed me an area in my midsection. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I've always had that. It's just part of it. But like you can do stuff to relieve tension. You can buy stuff like this, but at least my position is it was a $300 shirt, by the way. But then he said to me,
$300?
Yeah. I said, that sounds awesome, but I'm thinking to myself, and I think Emily said the same thing. You just need to do your mobility, man. You need to work on the things daily, just with what you have, which is just your body, your 2 arms, your 2 legs, your torso, and your brain to stretch every day. She said, you don't need this. I mean, you can buy it.
Essentially, it's just like some kind of, hold on, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
So it's like special material that's like, it's probably made out of the same material that they make like KT tape out of.
Yeah, remember when that wasn't a big thing and now everyone does it?
A leisure cotton shirt is $320.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember what we talked about on the social media episode about the detox thing that one of my clients was asking me about? And when you buy the detox, it also comes with a structured workout program and a nutrition program that you have to follow in order for the detox to work. Well, when I look at this stuff, it also, what's included is the movements and the stretches.
Right.
Okay, so if you want to test the validity of something, you take the thing and you do the thing without adding anything extra to it. And that lets you know if it works or not, right? But if you're adding, what was it back in the day? Those copper wristbands, right?
Yeah. The copper.
We're going to do this test on you. Hold your hands like this and then push apart, okay? And then hold your hands like this and then push apart. And we're going to throw on the copper wristband. Now I want you to stretch overhead and see how much your mobility is improved. No, it's because you did the freaking isometric hold before you put the wristband on, which the isometrics reduce pain and they increase mobility. Right? Yeah. So it's like, this is more marketing, at least just at first looking at it first.
Sure.
It's more marketing than anything. Like, most people don't feel an immediate physical reaction, but have no fear, it is working. We haven't yet run into anyone that it doesn't work on. We highly recommend you do the push test first so you can see how the technology is working. Okay, so I'm going to do the test first because I'm going to be more mobile after I do the test anyways. Reduce discomfort, instant structural change. Again, let's see, read the science. Tension relief technology. Again, they're adding things to it, right? A view testing data. Here we go.
Yeah. Pictures online. These pajamas, by the way, these silk PJ pajamas are $375. You think I should buy some for Emily?
They're how much?
$375.
No, she would be so mad.
She's like, so you know that we have a baby, right? You know that, right?
I don't know. The with and without's on here, the differences aren't that much, and that could be attributed to many things. That's the problem with studies. But
sure.
Anyway,
I wanted to ask you that. I wanted to end
it's
on
all related. For me, when it comes to the mobility stuff, and again, this is partially off topic. My boy's playing golf and he loves it. So now I need to get my mobility better because that's always been my limiting factor with being good at golf. But I know that if my mobility and my range of motion improves, then my ability to get stronger and gain muscle also will improve. So now I'm doing all the things to ensure that I can improve my thoracic flexibility, my shoulder flexibility, my lats, all that kind of stuff. And so one of my favorite things to do that I started doing, and it seems so simplistic, but I have a 60-pound kettlebell. I'll lay on the ground. I'll arch up. So you can imagine I'm laying flat and I arch my hips up. I'm holding the kettlebell like this. I'll straighten my arms out and the kettlebell will use weight and gravity to take my arms back. And what I'll do is I'll go as far back as I can with my hips up, and then I'll slowly drop my hips to the ground, and I'll hold that position until it's a lot of pain, and then I'll bring it forward and do a couple reps of pullovers, and then I go back. And by about 5 or 6 reps, I can touch the kettlebell to the ground with straight arms, which I can't do at rest normally without being warm.
Right.
So I'll do that, and I'll do some dead hangs and then some band stuff to kind of enhance that mobility there. But again, that's not stretching. That's tension under load.
Right. And it's training for a specific area where you want to get better, not and people who do play golf or play things recreationally like pickleball for me, you need to design a pickleball warm-up. You need to design a golf warm-up for yourself or go to a coach and say, hi, how do I do this? You need to do the research. You need to eat for your body. You need to train for your body type. You need to, train for your lifestyle and what's more important. But that's kind of where this whole episode went is CrossFit can be incredibly beneficial, but you have to train at the level you're at and then know where you want to go. You need to be able to understand the risks involved. You need to be able to, look at if you have those genetic potential in general, then great. Let's find out if you do, not necessarily like doing the 23andMe or any genetic testing, but trying to train different modalities. So you can try out CrossFit. You can try speed strength sports. You can try low intensity stuff. I mean, there's everyone who plays something. If they do a hobby, they might say, oh, I'm really good at that. Let me try to train more for it versus if you want to be at that level you're at, that's fine. But I think
you ever hear when people say load gainer versus the other end, they gain muscle easy. So you ever hear that person that or women love to say this, oh, if I stare at that weight, I gain muscle. It's those people that they're referring to likely have at least one copy of that gene.
Sure.
Right?
Well, I mean, I do say, oh, if I look at the cookie, then I'm going to gain weight. And I just say that because it's the whole joke is if it's in my environment, I will not be as happy and comfortable with my current plan as if it was not in my environment. And you have to change your environment and drink Gatorade Zero in your environment, Sprite Zero in your environment, protein shakes versus milkshakes from your local like Andy's or something like that. Like you have to change your environment completely. Versus if I stare at this, I'm going to gain muscle or I'm going to gain weight. Like, yeah, I mean, your environment should probably be better anyway.
So I think like to wrap up, I think the overarching theme here is, again, like Dave said, that CrossFit inherently is meant to be good. There's good intentions behind it. But as an individual, you really need to look at what's being laid out for you for that day, right? And understand or try to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. Okay. And yeah, not everybody's going to know if they have a bilateral deficit or not. But if you're constantly leaning to one side, or your right knee hurts, your left shoulder hurts, you likely have a bilateral deficit somewhere.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you want to have an idea of like what strengths and weaknesses you have, and then present that to the coach or the box owner or whatever, and say, hey, these are the issues that I'm having. I would like to sign up here, but I need to know that as an individual, I'm going to be able to make some progress. And don't show me comparisons of how this person and that person, because every individual is different. I need to know that you're going to take care of me as a person, right? And if you get some like legitimate feedback as to what they're going to do, then just make sure they double down on it, right? And if not, then you got to find something else that's going to meet your needs. Because if you're investing, some of these places are $500 a month or whatever. Like if that's your investment into your health, but you're not getting any real specificity or attention outside of the group, then you might need to find somewhere else to invest that money.
Right. Well, I think that that's the best place to end it. As always, we appreciate y'all listening, and trying to add some more pictures behind me. My wife got on me about all the little holes that I have in the wall. Justin's production value with the Peloton in the back. Where's your flag? You didn't get the flag yet.
I was telling you that it's going to be a pain for me to get it down. And I like
to get it down. You got to get another one.
I could do that.
I'm just saying. Supply chain's good, right? I don't know.
I just figured like my head is so big that it's taking up.
You do have a big melon, but I like to think that's contributing. I have a big head too, to a big brain. My son has a very big head, but he's just like his papa. So we're big brained humans.
Fair enough.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll end it there with our giant brains, and we hope that you continue to listen, subscribe, follow YouTube or Spotify, and see our clips. Comment on the clips if you like them. If you want different clips, go ahead, Justin. You said you were going to say something.
5-star review.
5-star review does help. That'll certainly get us to charts. We want to help people. That's the way to get us there.
If you don't have a paid account for Spotify, you cannot leave a 5-star review. You have to have a paid account.
Yep.
So I think you can leave a comment, which is why my mom did, because she didn't have a paid account.
Hell yeah, Flair.
But if you do, just click that 5th star for us. Like anything that's worth doing, you have to start kind of without a ton of knowledge.
And that's our promise to you. We are preparing for this more and more every single episode. And I'm always bouncing ideas off of Justin. He's bouncing ideas off of me. And then we're both bouncing it off of people closest to us, whether that's our wives or clients or just friends and family members. So thank y'all so much. We hope that you continue to listen before, and we'll see you again next time.